What's up, bros? Welcome to the Men of Mind podcast. I'm Omar Bravo, and this is the podcast all about badass knack bros and their journeys through life. From the bad beats and the lessons learned to the mountaintop successes and advice they'd give their younger selves, this is your chance to get to know these bros better. In this episode, I talk with Alex Jara, Untitled Chapter Kappa Class number 63 from Santa Clara University. Órale. Órale.
Hey, what's up?
What's happening, my brother?
Nothing much. Just hanging out, waiting for this interview.
I hope you haven't been waiting long.
Nah, I'm good.
Right on. So what's happening, my man? Do you make everybody call you doctor like a giant douchebag, or you just?
No, I'm actually completely opposed to it. Actually, I actually don't like it. I don't like it.
It's pretty. I don't know. Pompous, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's pompous, hierarchical, I think, and yeah, I'm not a fan. I know a lot of people. I was actually having a discussion. So I'm going to be starting a job down at LMU on Monday. So that's Loyola Marymount down in LA. And we had orientation last week, and I was talking to like a few of the other like new hires. And one of the things we were talking about also was like, oh, do you guys plan on wearing like suits and all that? And I was like, nah, I've always been kind of opposed to that because yeah, it comes off as elitist. I think that's the term we're looking for, right?
Oh, not pompous.
Yeah, I pompous works, but I think it's elitist, right? Where you're wearing a suit to separate yourself from the students that, you're kind of coming off as like, from like a different class. And I'm like, I know I never related to professors like that. And I want students to be able to relate to me. So, I mean, I typically dress pretty casually. I mean, I don't wear my hats like this or anything, but, I'm normally pretty dressed down. Just like some Vans, jeans. And then like, if it's hot, I'll throw on like a t-shirt with like a sweater. Like, that's it. But yeah, I mean, I normally keep it pretty casual actually, just because I don't know. I feel like I'm more relatable that way.
It's interesting because I know some folks that like try to pump it up and oh, doctor this or doctor that, and it comes across to me like trying too hard. Like, hey, let just you don't need the title. Let your actions, let your words, speak for you. I feel like when people try to promote the title too much, it kind of does a disservice to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like when I was in grad school with, I mean, like it was so long ago, but with like a bunch of like my other buddies, who are like first generation, first in their families go to college, that also got their PhD, and we would joke around. It's like, yeah, no, any brown kid whatsoever. It's like, no, don't worry about it. Just call me profe. If you're a white kid though, you're gonna call me doctor. And so like we would joke around about that. But and part of that, right, is because of the fact that like a Latino, I think, or a brown student, right, person of color will like look at us like, oh, like we're gonna get that respect anyway. Whereas when you come from a place of privilege, you won't always necessarily give people that don't look like you that respect.
Right.
So so like we would joke around about it, but it's right, like every joke is kind of based on some kind of truth, right?
For sure. So,
it was something we joke around about, but we're like, nah, like sometimes you got to make it sure that, like, I do have one friend that like, he puts doctor in front of his name all the time. And I'll put the PhD afterwards, but like, if students ask like, oh, like, I don't want you calling me by my first name, but you can call me like profe, and like, you have to say my last name or anything like that. Profe is fine. Professor is fine. But I don't need to hear the doctor.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get it twisted. I mean, I got to give you your flowers. This is a huge deal, bro. Like, it's an enormous deal. But I think that, like I said, your work speaks for yourself. You don't got to walk around with all your chains and titles,
with all the regalia and everything.
Yeah, you don't got to show up with your regalia.
That big regalia and my little painter's hat.
Well, and there's that Chris Rock bit, when he talks about how when somebody comes home, he's like, oh, I got my master's. He's like, oh, what, you my master now?
Yeah.
he's like you ain't shit here.
Yeah.
I think the scripture is that only in his hometown and among his family is a prophet without honor.
Right. That's true. Yeah. Everyone else looks at you, is like, man, you saying that you're the same mother. Like, I used to punk you, like my cousin. Like, just like, man, just get that away from me. Like,
Dr. Gomez, yeah, never mind.
yeah.
Oh man. But like I said, congratulations, man. That's a big deal. Long time coming. I mean, how
Yeah.
long have you been working towards this?
So in total, it took me 8 years.
8 years after undergrad?
Yeah. So I did. So I went to Santa Clara.
And what was your major at Santa Clara?
So I majored in Latin American history, and then I minored in urban education. Like I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Like I knew I wanted to be involved in education somehow. And when I graduated, I actually worked at a middle school for a year, and then I worked at an elementary school. So I taught like sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, and then I taught first graders and third graders. And what I always wanted to do, I'm listening to your podcast. So like I know there's a lot of Bellarmine guys. I was one of those Bellarmine guys.
Okay.
And I always wanted to go back and teach at Bellarmine, because when I was leaving, they had started like an outreach program to get more Latinos and to retain more Latinos at Bellarmine. And so I wanted to be like, a teacher that that these new recruits, right, could identify with, that they could kind of see themselves in, and then not just see themselves, but then say, he was a graduate from here, and if he was able to stick it out, and if he was able to make it through, then so can I, kind of a thing.
Hey, let me pause for a second. When you were there, did you guys have any teachers that looked like you?
Yeah, so we did. So if you talk to like Lizard, you talk to like Gustavo, like a bunch of those guys were the same age, like Oscar Silva. Miss Martinez was in the Spanish program, and when I met her, she had just been teaching there for I think 4 years, because I think like Lizard and like Gustavo, like whatever their class was, they were like the first students that she taught when she was there. Mm-hmm. So she was in the Spanish department. She was really cool. I really got along with her. She's actually sisters with Lorenzo's wife,
Brenda,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, that makes sense. I connect the last name. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went to Bellarmine and then to Santa Clara.
Yeah. So I did the whole Bellarmine Santa Clara thing. I remember I got my acceptance letter to San Diego State, and I thought I was going to go there because I couldn't stand my parents. I wanted to get the hell out of here. And then I got my acceptance letter to Santa Clara, and one of the most responsible and probably mature decisions I've made in my life, because I actually sat down and thought about it and thought, okay, yourself, your personality. If you go down to San Diego, you're probably going to spend more time in TJ than you will in class. So, you've gotten the Jesuit education, you like the small classes, you like that whole kind of, right, being a man for others kind of a thing. So Santa Clara might be a better life decision for you. And so that's really kind of what it boiled down to. Is like I actually took like a couple of days to really think about it. I thought I was gonna be going to San Diego like as soon as I got that, because I was like, I'm out of here, like I don't like your rules. So yeah, I went to Santa Clara, and I actually commuted. So I was a commuter up until my senior year.
And what year did you graduate Santa Clara?
2008 would have been the year.
Okay. Yeah. And then after that, did you go straight to grad school? No, you said you taught for a couple of years.
So I taught for 3 years, and then when I got really serious about like, okay, I want to end up at Bellarmine, what do I need to do? I went on the faculty website, and I noticed that something like 95% of all the faculty had either a master's degree in their field of study, or they had their teaching credential. And because I had the urban education minor, I knew what education classes were like, and I found them kind of dry and boring. And I happened to find history really interesting. So I applied to a lot of history programs. And I had just one of the first places I looked into was the University of New Mexico out in Albuquerque. And it's just, I wanted to leave home. I wanted to go somewhere else. And I remember being a kid and going out there for a soccer tournament. And I enjoy the heat. And, I literally just typed in Albuquerque universities, UNM popped up, went to the history program. I liked what they had to offer. And so that was my first choice. Ended up applying, got in, and
That's super random for
yeah,
from Bay Area to Albuquerque.
yeah.
Did you have any connection with Javi Benavides before you went out there?
I had met him once when I was out here, and then we connected. And I should have done a better job at trying to like connect with him while I was out there, because I was out there for like 5 years. And during those 5 years, I know he invited me to his wedding because I was moving out like the summer before I was starting classes. I was going to get out there, and it was like a week right after I moved out there that he was getting married, and he had sent me an invitation, but I was kind of unpacking my stuff, and I didn't go to the wedding, and I kind of feel bad that I didn't, because I feel like we would have connected, and then I might have been able to get to know him a little bit better while I was out there.
So you saw him a couple times or not at all?
I think I saw him once.
Oh wow, in 5 years.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, and so 5 years, and that was for your master's degree?
So the master's took me 2 years.
Uh-huh.
So I was out there 2011, 2013. I graduated the master's degree. And so I started the PhD program the following year. And it took me 1 year to do the coursework. And then it took me another year to take my comprehensive exams and then to write my research proposal. And then I was out there for another year kind of doing some research. Like about half a year I was out there. And then I ended up moving back home because my dissertation actually looks at the urban development of San Jose and kind of Santa Clara County from 1940 to 1980. And during the transition from kind of this agricultural hub to the quote unquote capital of Silicon Valley, I was interested in how the Latino community was impacted, and then in turn, how they responded to that growth socially, culturally, and politically, particularly. What kind of tools did they use to establish themselves socially and culturally? How were they impacted politically? And then how did they make their voices known politically? Within those 40 years. So that's, I came back home because I live here, and all the research was going to be here at San Jose State, Stanford. I met a few people. I was able to interview them. So it just made sense to move back. But I think I might have finished a little sooner had I been a little more, I guess, disciplined with myself. Like if I would have told myself, you're going to go home for 1 year and do as much research as you can, and then go back to New Mexico where you have kind of this cohort of academics that you're used to socializing with, that'll keep you in check, that'll keep you on task. Because I definitely came out here and then start to reconnect with people that I haven't seen in 4 or 5 years, and next thing you know, people want to go to the bars, people try to hang out. And it's a little harder to say no when you haven't seen somebody for so long, and then there's something happening every single weekend, and people aren't doing the same thing as you are, right? There's no one else to kind of hold you accountable for not waking up and making sure you read that book you're supposed to read, so you can cite it in this chapter or whatever. So I think I could have finished a little bit sooner had I been a little more disciplined, but at the end of the day, I got it done. I'm really happy with the product that I put out.
So you started in 2014, and then you just finished this past June.
Yes.
So that was 8 years. Damn, if I did all that, I'd make people call me doctor, bro. I think you should rethink that decision.
Yeah, no,
you could have gone to med school in that time.
Yeah, the funny thing, when I started off as an undergrad, I actually went in as a psychology major, and I was like, because I took an intro to psychology class my senior year at Bellarmine, and I found it interesting, and I thought, yeah, I'd be interested in the topic. I'm sure, maybe I could be a counselor, and then after my first quarter, I was like, it looks like I'm going to need to get a master's degree if I want to make any kind of money with a psychology degree. And I was like, nah, once I'm done with my undergrad, I'm not trying to do any more school. Knowing what I know now, if I would have stuck with I could have been a psychiatrist. I could have had a private practice by now. I could have been doing a bunch of stuff, but it is what it is. You end up where you end up. And I think I'm where I'm supposed to be at this point. So, I'm cool with it, but it's just, when we look back at things in retrospect.
So for the past 8 years, you haven't just been doing your dissertation, right? I assume you've been working.
Yeah. So when I was living out there, right, I was like a graduate assistant, right? So like you go and like, you have these classes, like 200 students, I'm the one doing all the grading, holding office hours and stuff like that. And then when I moved back home, for like a year and a half, like 2 years, I was actually teaching at Santa Clara in the history department. So Ramon Chacon, I think, was probably there when like you were there.
Mm-hmm.
When I moved back, I think it was like the year that I moved back, he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had one less person to teach Latin American history. The other person that was teaching Latin American history was this Jesuit priest, Arthur Liebscher. He was my undergraduate advisor. He just decided that he no longer wanted to teach. Mm-hmm. He's like, you know what? I'm getting close to retirement. I want to work with the alumni office. Good luck finding someone. The department knew that I was out here because I'd reached out to them, telling them like, hey, if you need anyone to teach classes, let me know. So they did. They reached out to me. And so I taught for 2 quarters. And then the pandemic hit in 2020. Like, I remember I had my last class on a Wednesday, and I had just spoken with Ricardo Cortez because he's working at Santa Clara. And so I spoke with him. We had spoken right before my class, and we were talking about, do you think classes are going to stop? Do you think they're going to close campus? I was like, I don't think so. I don't think it's that serious. And he told me, he's like, well, USC and Stanford just closed their campuses like earlier today. Like, really? He's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. Went, taught my class, came back to my office, checked my email. I was like, yeah, from here on out, like the rest of the quarter. Yeah, there was only 1 week left. It was dead week. So there wasn't I wasn't teaching a whole lot more after that. And so that Wednesday was the last class that I taught. And the following week, right, was like kind of dead week. I just had the students turn in their final early, graded, and then they didn't hire me back as an adjunct the following year, which meant that they went an entire year without offering any Latin American history class.
Wow.
Yeah. And so just this last academic year, they reached out to me in the summer again saying, hey, look, we're going to come back in person. It's going to be kind of somewhat of a hybrid kind of a thing. If you're still interested, and if you're still here, let us know because we want you to teach a few courses for us. So I taught some Latin American history classes, then I taught a U.S. race and immigration course. So I was at Santa Clara this past year, and I taught my last class in the spring, and I had applied for a few jobs, didn't hear back from anybody, and then just like maybe about a month ago, I heard back from LMU. And so that's why I'm taking this trip down to LA to kind of teach there for a year as a visiting assistant professor in the Chicano Latino Studies department.
Right on, bro. That's a big deal. I mean, for those folks who knew Ramon Chacon, I mean, he was a legend. So to even get to hang anywhere near that legacy, that's a big deal, bro.
Yeah, it was when they hired me for this last academic year, they told me what classes that they wanted me to teach. And one of the classes was Modern Mexico. And that was the class, that was one of the major classes that Chacon taught. Mm-hmm. And so like, I knew I was going to be teaching this class, but then it wasn't until I actually sat down to start making the syllabus, like around, it was like late February, early March. I sat down to like really like, okay, like what readings am I going to do? How has the class been taught in the past? How would I teach this class that kind of aligns with my research interests? And it got me thinking, I was like, damn, like Ramon Chacon is actually one of the, like, I remember telling myself, like, it wasn't something that I was really thinking about, but I remember seeing him on campus, and I, as a history person, like I took a lot of classes with him. And I remember thinking to myself, if I ever became a professor, like I would want to be like this guy. Like this guy just seems so cool, hella down to earth. And I took like every Latin American history class that he offered, I took it. And when I sat down to write the syllabus, I told myself, like, dude, you've kind of come full circle. Like the first Latin American history class you ever took, the class that you took that really got you thinking about, right, becoming a teacher and using history as the degree in which you want to educate people in, like, was this class with Ramon Chacon. And he's passed away, and you're now going to teach that class. It's the first time this class is going to be taught since he passed away, and you're the one that's going to teach it. So like I sat down to write the syllabus, and I actually I couldn't work the rest of the day. Like I literally just kind of sat there. I still have my notebook from that class. I have his syllabus.
Wow.
So I kind of just sat with it for the day and kind of just like let that sit in, that like, dude, you really have come like a long way from being that, that sophomore, your undergrad year to like now you're going to be teaching this class that really inspired you to learn about your own culture, but then also inspired you to want to inspire other students like yourself. So it was just like there was like a lot that was going through my mind when I sat down to write that syllabus.
That's incredible. I mean, I remember being in Chacon's class. I was a computer engineer, but I got a chance to take, I think, Chicano studies with him. And I took another one with Ana Maria Pineda, who's still there. I actually just had a conversation with her.
Did she interview you for like that little
Yes.
project you were doing?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So I didn't know you were teaching at Santa Clara at the time.
Yeah. So I've been the last 2 years, and she reached out to me. So I spoke with her. She doesn't really know what this project is. I just know that she asked me that question, right? They're like, as an alumni, what's something the university can do for you? I'm like, did you ask that correctly? Because I'm not sure I'm understanding. Like, because normally as an alumni, this university is asking what we can do for the school.
Right.
But she's trying to flip it a little bit. And I mean, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I didn't have an answer for her.
What I told her was I wanted to see more opportunities to help influence the both alumni and the current population, and even do recruiting. I mean, if you live in San Jose, you don't need to recruit for Santa Clara, right? Everybody knows about Santa Clara. But when you live in Utah, nobody knows about Santa Clara, and it's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my life. And so it's like, hey, how can I help bring little brown kids from Utah out there?
Yeah, well, because I'm always interested, exactly like you just said, right? If you're from San Jose, anywhere kind of here in the South Bay, Santa Clara is like a university that stands out. People know about it. But when you're coming from Utah, I was listening to some of the podcasts earlier, and like I remember like Lorenzo kind of saying that for he's like, I applied for 3 universities, but I don't think he ever talked about like how Santa Clara even got on his radar, right? Like I don't think he, if you did, I missed it. But so like, I'd be interested for you, like what got like, how did Santa Clara get on your radar?
So my answer was the same as Tennyson's, right? I thought I was going to Stanford, and then when that didn't work out, then it was Santa Clara.
Got you.
I had 2 older siblings that went to Stanford, so that's how I knew about Santa Clara. They told me, they're like, hey, if Stanford doesn't work out, Santa Clara is just down the road and it's phenomenal. So
I got you.
Yeah, but I didn't know anything about it growing up.
Yeah, I just kind of like, okay, I guess there's this other school I can go to.
I saw palm trees on the brochure. I'm like, this.
Yeah, it was like, sure.
So let's take it way back. Well, actually, I missed the very first question, and it is single and ready to mingle, married with kids, or somewhere in between.
I guess it's somewhere in between. There's a girl.
You have some kids and you're kind of single.
No. I'm not married, technically single, right? But like I'm like, there's a girl I'm talking to. We're kind of trying to see where things go. I guess just taking it really slowly at the moment, but
So through all this time, you've been living the college life.
Yeah, pretty much.
We're going on like 14 years since you graduated undergrad. So that's 18 years. You could have.
So I remember one of the things that like I heard it from like multiple people, like Gustavo. I remember Gustavo was like, the main one is like, don't get a girlfriend, especially not a Lambda. I was like, okay, and then I went and got myself a girlfriend, happened to be a Lambda. And I was with her like pretty much all 4 years for the most part. It was like off and on, but like pretty much all 4 years. And even after we graduated, we were still kind of talking and stuff, like a little bit afterwards. And then once that was completely done, like I told myself, I was like, you know what? No need to get into a relationship again until you know you're actually ready to do that. Like just, And so, yeah, I mean, I've just kind of stayed single. I know when I moved out to Albuquerque, the initial plan was I was going to go out there to get my master's degree, and then I was going to come back home. So I told myself, there's no point in even trying to entertain a kind of relationship if you're just going to be out here fucking short term, And so never really thought about it. And then next thing you know, it's like, well, you applied to a PhD program. But the thought was that like, I only need to be here 1 extra year for my coursework. Everything else I can do from back home. So I always had this thing in my mind where everything was just gonna be for 1 year. So there's no point in kind of trying to look for something serious because I was always just gonna leave. I mean, knowing what I know now that I actually was there for 5 years, I probably, had I had an open mind, I mean, who knows what would have happened, but I just always kind of had that mentality that, oh, I'm going to be there for a short time and I'm going to come back. So there's no point in like.
And so that's the mentality you're carrying to LA, right? Because you're only going for a year.
That is a mentality I'm taking with me down to LA. But I mean, it's because I've reflected on this and like, yeah, okay, you had that mentality, but that's what you had last time. So maybe be a little more open, but just know that, I mean, because this position is just for 1 year. And for me, I know I've always wanted to come back home. I wanted to live here in San Jose or here in the Bay Area. I'm actually more interested in teaching at a community college. They pay a lot more. And
the community college pays more?
Like $30,000 more.
Why?
I have no idea. Like starting out at Santa Clara, I get with my PhD, I get started at like 60, maybe 60. I could probably argue for like 65 because I have teaching experience. At a community college with my PhD, I get started at like 92, 93. And I could probably argue for a little bit more because I have teaching experience as well.
Wow.
So yeah, like they pay just a lot better at the community. They pay a lot better than the States and the UCs because it's the same thing at the States and the UCs. Again, this is coming from the School of Arts and Sciences. This is coming from being a history professor. If you're teaching in the business school, if you're teaching in the engineering department, that's where all the funding is. So, someone in my position with a recently minted PhD is going to get paid a lot more starting in those department in those schools than the School of Arts and Sciences, which
it is what it is.
It is what it is. I think it's kind of bullshit because I did just as much schooling. I'm just as educated as other people, but it's the place in which society puts value on education. Like, well, that's not important. History is not important, apparently. Sociology is important. Studying the way people interact with one another, study how people have interacted with each other historically, and how to prevent past mistakes from happening again. How to understand systemic racism apparently isn't important enough to pay us for what we do.
See, I'm gonna say it again. That's why you got to make people call you doctor.
Maybe I will.
That's good. So you couldn't stand your parents and you wanted to get out of the house, but then you ended up staying for another 4 years.
So I ended up. So I moved out my senior year, kind of took out a loan so I could live in the NAC house. I lived there with Jose Delgado and his brother Armando Delgado. Great fucking house. It was just an amazing experience. And then the following year when I was teaching at the middle school, it's a small little Jesuit school in the Willow Glen area, kind of moving towards downtown. And they actually had, they own an apartment complex. And so they just ask that you pay very minimal rent and your utilities. They didn't pay very much, and the apartment complex is actually pretty run down, but it was a place to live, so I lived there for a year after I graduated, and then came back home for a year and a half, and then after that, that's when I moved out to Albuquerque and was out there for 5 years or so.
What was the main motivation for really wanting to get away from your parents, other than just being 18?
Well, that was pretty much it. I literally was just I'm the oldest, so
how many siblings?
I'm the oldest of 3 boys.
Okay.
If you ask a bunch of the Macs that are around during my time, even a little bit older, like they can tell you who Leo is, because as soon as I started going to Santa Clara, he was coming with me to all the parties, so everybody got to know him. And then the youngest one, I'm 10 years older than the youngest one.
Oh, wow.
My parents waited. My mom really wanted a girl. And so like, well, there's enough time. There's a window here where like I can still have kids, and like let's try to have a girl, and ended up with another boy. You know, so I went to Santa Clara. Leo ended up going to San Jose State, and because he was just down the street, right? He was like, "Hey, Leo, come through. There's a party." Da 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 da. And then like some of the knacks over here would actually like call Leo, like, "Hey, you got classes? Like I'm supposed to be going." It's like, if we just pick you up, can you come drink with us? Like, sure. So then like they'd go pick him up from San Jose State, and like sometimes I would show, like I'd be on campus at work, and then I'd walk to the house, and I'd find my brother kind of passed out or just like drinking. Like, what the hell is he doing here? It's like, oh, we picked him up because we wanted to drink, and you were at work. I was like, oh, ridiculous. So yeah. But right, to get back to your original question, I mean, because I was the oldest, I was the one that like had to break all the rules. I was the one that, you know, had all that tension with my parents that like, you know, when I started going to Santa Clara, they didn't want me spending the night. I had to come home, and I was very honest. I was like, I'm going to be drinking at these parties, and I think the responsible thing is to not drink and drive. And it's like, well, you should just not be drinking in general. And it's like, well, I'm going to though. I remember the very first weekend, like I had told my parents, yeah, I'm not going to come home on Friday because I'm going to go to a party. And I went, I played soccer. I remember being on the field and I had like 4 missed calls from my dad. And I was like, I already know what this is about. Like, hello. It was like, hey, on down this, you know, like, where are you at? I was like, I just finished playing. I'm gonna take a shower and I'm gonna go out. I was like, you're not coming home? I was like, no. And he's like, I thought I told you that you needed to come home. I was like, I thought I told you I'm not going to. And so like, and then that led to tension with me and my dad. And then like that led to tension with me and my mom. And you know, it was just, that was happening when I was in college, but it was happening already when I was in high school, right? Like, you know, what time are you going to be home? What time are you going to do this? Like, you know, just like, why can't I have a little snack? I'm a good student. Like I do what I'm supposed to do. But it was just like really, really difficult. And I just wanted to leave home so I could have that independence.
Where did that independent streak come from? Because I struggle to think that most people would be that candid with their parents.
Oh no! So okay, so I'll tell you the story. So it was my senior year. So I started drinking pretty young. I was like a sophomore. No, I was like a freshman in high school. Like the first time I kind of like had like a little bit to drink. Then my dad found out that I was drinking probably like the end of my sophomore year, beginning of my junior year. And you know, like I wasn't ever getting too wasted or anything. I'd have like a few beers and like, you know, I'd come home or like I would, you know, stay with my friends or whatever. But he like, I got caught one time by my buddy's parents because I spent the night at his house. And so I thought that they were going to tell my dad. So before they told, I was like, okay, I'm just going to confess to my dad. So I told him, and he's, you know, he kind of laughed it off. He's like, you know what, like, it's fine. Like, you know, like I've never seen you kind of come home, like kind of suspicious. So like, it's fine. Just make sure your mom doesn't find out. It's like, okay, cool. And everything was fine up until my senior year where I got invited to a party. It was the first time that I wasn't going to be the driver, because normally like I would pick up my friends and I would drive. So that's why I was always able to like, just like, all right, I'm gonna have a few, chug a bunch of water before and I can come home. But this one time was like the one time that I didn't have to drive. And so I was like, oh, like I can actually just kind of drink. So I went, you know, had too much, ended up throwing up at the party, have to call my parents, tell them that I'm going to be late. And then I ended up being really late because I didn't want to come home. And so I'm coming in through the garage, past my parents' bedroom, because normally I knock and tell them that I'm home. And I was like, if I'm quiet enough, I could go and finish throwing up and I could tell them I'm home and I'm just going to out. Of course, because it's late, right? Like they couldn't go to sleep. Well, my mom in particular, I couldn't go to sleep. So like when they didn't hear me say I'm home, my mom wakes up, hears me throwing up. Are you okay? And, you know, my dad opens the door and he's all pissed. It's like, oh, this is why you wanted to go out. And I look like, yeah, this is why I wanted to go out, you know? And so then like a couple of days later, he has a talk with me and he's just like, okay, so like, you're not going to drink anymore. You're going to stop drinking. And I was like, look, you've always told me to be a very honest person. And so I'm not going to sit here. Like I can sit here and I can lie to you, but I don't want to lie to your face. I'm not going to stop drinking. Like I'm just not. And he was just like, the look on his face was just complete and utter shock that I would just tell him that, you know, he's telling me to do something. I'm completely contradicting him. And so, we ended up talking for about an hour, and he's just like, wait, well, where did this come from? Like, why do you want to drink in the first place? And, I just kind of told him like what my truth was. I was curious about it. I never saw him drink. He wasn't a drinker. The most I ever saw him drink was maybe like 2 beers. And so I told him, I was like, look, like, I'm sure you were doing good by me, by my brothers, by not being a drunk, by not drinking, but maybe just because we never saw it, like I was curious about it. And like,
So
it's like,
still your fault.
he's like, damn, well, that backfired. Like, I was like, like, I was curious. I tried it and I liked it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And so then, so like, since then, so like, at that point, my senior year, like, he would be like a little kind of like, like, that was like the only time that I got that drunk in high school. That happened a little more frequently in college, but I wasn't driving because I was just like getting drunk at the dorms or whatever. But yeah, no, like, yeah, that's, my dad and I had a very kind of contentious relationship. But like, when we were good, like, he and I were like best buds. Like, no one could, like, we would joke around, we would like get along really, really well. But if he was mad at me for some reason, or if I was mad at him, like my brother used to call us canicas, like marbles. He was like, oh, these guys walking down the hall, they're just gonna like, clash, it's like. So yeah, it was just, it was an interesting dynamic with my dad.
That's something so unique though, that you had such an honest relationship though. Like, that's super legit, because a lot of folks could say that they had super cordial relationships with their parents, but it was based all off well, I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear, I'm just going to lie to you all the time,
like here's the facade of like what I'm doing.
Right. Oh, we're going camping, we're going to the movies, and then everything was cool. Like, that was my relationship with my parents. It was like, I never told the truth. I never went where I said I was going, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I was always pretty honest with them about where I was going. And again, I mean, it wasn't until like I got caught, where my mom found out, that it was like, okay. And then he felt like he had to step in. Mm-hmm. But at that point, it was like, well, I'm going to be leaving like 6 months to college anyway. I'm going to be staying out. Like,
it's over.
I could find your face, or I could just be honest with you, and I'd rather just be honest with you. So, like that was my take.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Tell me about your folks. Where are they from?
So my mom, so they're both from Mexico. My mom was born in Michoacan. My dad was born in Jalisco. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, I guess when he was like 6 or 7, he ended up moving to like a small town in Michoacan also. And then my dad came when he was like 18. My mom came when she was like 14. She was like 14 or 15. She didn't come, like they brought her. She didn't really want to come, but like her dad was over here. I'd already started like another family, and then sent for my mom and her brother, right, to like bring them to the United States. And then they met at some kind of dance at Mountain View High School, because my mom was like living in, like, she was raised kind of like in like EPA. And then my dad was living in like Redwood City. And I guess there was some kind of dance or something like at Mountain View High School, like, or Mountain View Community Center or something like that. It was something in Mountain View, and that's where they met. And then like they dated for a few years, and then they ended up getting married.
Did they? You said that, so you're first generation, and then did they go to any type of college?
My dad had like a 5th grade education, I think. Mm-hmm. My mom graduated high school here, and then she was enrolled at Foothill. And I think she was enrolled. She was enrolled for like a semester, but I don't think she actually went to classes because like she had to work. So like I don't even like I know she was enrolled. She was getting a lot of encouragement from some of her high school teachers to like apply to colleges. But at that time, she's like, well, I got to work. I have like 6 younger siblings. My dad works, and like they need me to help. So she was enrolled, but like as far as I know, I don't think she actually ever attended.
Where did the influence come from to, I guess, first get you into Bellarmine, and then second to get you into actual college?
It was just ingrained in us since we were little, and like I think my parents were both on that same page, that they both wanted an education. Like I guess my dad had always said that. So my grandpa, my dad's dad, I guess he was a butcher in Mexico. So my dad wasn't too far. Like I think his family was pretty well off, right? Because they had like the carniceria in like their little town. So everybody, went to the butcher shop for meat. And so my dad grew up like butchering cows, like killing animals and stuff. And so I guess he had told my mom that had he had the opportunity to go to school, he thinks he would have been a surgeon, or that he would have wanted to be like,
Wow.
but he never had the opportunity to do that. So he always valued education. And then my mom, I think, kind of had the same mentality where, she had high school and then she had the opportunity to go to college, but like not really. And so I think they were on the same page that, look, our kids are going to go to college, because I don't remember at any point in time thinking that college was an option. It's not an option. It's what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was always just like, that's what's expected of you. And so, I mean, we didn't know what Bellarmine was, like my parents actually just really valued private education. I went to public school for first grade, and after that they found this elementary school. I went there through like sixth grade, and then I went to public school for seventh and eighth grade. And then my eighth grade year, some of my friends on my soccer team, they started talking about high school, and I just all assumed that we're all gonna go to the same high school. But like half of them were gonna go to the public school, and the other half were gonna go to Bellarmine. And then when my parents found out about, it's a private Jesuit high school, it's an all boys school, I mean, that turned me off, right? I didn't want to go, but they're like, no, you're going to take the test. You're going to see if you can get into the school. And, I ended up getting in, and I remember hating my freshman year. Like I didn't like it my freshman year, but I think it's because I didn't really give it a shot. A lot of my best friends were still going to public school. And so I kept trying to, I didn't try to make myself feel like I was at home at Bellarmine. I kept trying to hang out with my other friends from the other schools, and I would always feel like I was out of place, right? Because they would talk about things that happened on campus, things that happened like in their experiences, and I wasn't really trying to make any real friends, any real connections at Bellarmine. And so I actually, for like a short while, I actually thought about like purposely flunking just so that like I didn't have to be there. But they have a really good soccer program, and I was really into soccer. And so I was like, you know what, like soccer is important to you. Like, why don't you just like buy into it, dude? You're here. You have some good friends here. Why don't you just try to nurse those friendships and forget about, like, not forget about them, but like, maybe you can reconnect with those other friends at some other point in time in your life. But like right now, these are your friends. These are the ones that you're going to be able to connect with, but that's going to make you feel like you're at home here on campus. And so once I did that switch, things at Bellarmine were fantastic. Like I loved my experience there.
It's always really interesting for me to see, especially first generation folks, where some parents, regardless of whether they had any education or opportunities or not, some parents really really value education, and others are like, no, just get your nose out of the book and come,
like work.
You got to work, because this is the only thing. It's essentially it's that generational thinking, right? Where it's like some parents just focus on the here and now, and we got to pay rent this month, and other parents are thinking about their kids and their grandkids' lives.
Well, because that's one thing that I've heard you kind of mention, right? That like by one person going to college, that actually just changes the trajectory, not just for them personally, but like for the generations to follow. I know in my family, on my dad's side of the family, and on my mom's side of the family too, I was the first one to go to college. Like out of all my cousins,
like just straight up first one to go to college.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah,
that is so crazy.
So because of that, like my graduation parties have always been huge.
Well, and you've had so many of them.
There's just a lot of cousins. And like I remember, like I know, like a lot of my aunts, pull me to the side all the time and just say like, "Thank you for doing this." And it's like, I'm trying to better myself, but like, yeah, like, and like I've had cousins that, will call me from time to time and just say, "Hey, look, like I'm struggling with like an application," or "Look, I'm looking to transfer. Can you go through these units with me? Something's happening where like my counselor says that I'm missing a class. Can you go through my schedule?" So I've helped out like a few cousins. I actually have, there's a cousin on my dad's side who was actually like really kind of involved in like gang activity and stuff. He's like really highly involved in it. And then he ended up doing some jail time, got out. He actually ended up going to Berkeley. He just graduated from Berkeley.
Wow.
He's now at Stanford. He's a PhD student at Stanford. And he's in sociology, and it's like really cool to like see the way he's turned his life around. But like he and I, like at like parties, like, you know, we'll like talk and say, hey, so like how's, you know, like he tells me, it's like, dude, it's like it's actually really refreshing, and it's actually like comforting to like know that like, look, like I can talk to you about some of the stuff that I'm dealing with, or like, and I mean his life growing up was different than mine, so keeping his life experiences right in a college atmosphere is very different, right? Because I grew up kind of in private schools. I grew up being used to being like the one brown kid in class, right? And like being like having to like speak for people, or like feeling like you're like the token student in class, where he's coming out from a very different perspective and coming from like the streets, right? Like his mentality is very different. And so when he's in a seminar, he's like, yeah, sometimes like there's people I just don't get along with them. Like their tone just sets me off, dude. And then, you know, but like he's able to talk to me about it because I'm kind of this middle ground. So it's interesting to have that conversation with him during these like family parties sometimes, you know, and then just to kind of help him out through kind of the process of like what he's going through with regards to what's the coursework going to look like, what's it going to look like when you start to write your dissertation, how do you find your research topics, you know, like yeah, it's just really interesting to see how that's kind of transpired.
Just another reason that you should make people call you doctor, brother. Maybe you could come up with like, maybe we could Dr. Hada, maybe you could just be DJ.
I mean, you know, DJ. Hey, call me DJ.
You call me DJ, Dr. Hada. That's fantastic. Talk to me about what made you get interested in NAC?
It was like a lot of different things. Well, I think like everybody, or like maybe not everybody, for like the majority of the people, I think we had this preconceived notion when we went to Santa Clara of what a fraternity was. And it's like white students, you know, they're partying, they make you do stupid shit when they're pledging. You know, not to say that our stuff wasn't necessarily like the smartest all the time, but you know, but like just you have this idea of what fraternity life is. And I remember like not even, it was never on my radar that there was such a thing as like a multicultural or like a Latino fraternity or anything like that. And so I remember just like being on campus one day and just like seeing these guys wearing these letters and shit. And I'm just like, that looks kind of cool. And I ended up meeting like a few of them. And then just after I met them during like Thanksgiving break.
Who were some of the actives when you were?
So Mace and Abe were seniors.
Okay.
Mace and Abe were seniors. Tito was a junior. And it was basically the IOTA line. So it was like Jose Alvarez, Luis Mendoza, Luis John Tavares, Ricardo Cortez. Those two went to Bellarmine. And then, was it just those four? I know they had pledged with this guy named Sterling, but he had dropped. I think those were the only four that actually ended up crossing. So yeah, it was like those four, Abe and Mace. Yeah, it was just them four, Abe and Mace. And so I had met Luis because I had stored a bottle in one of my friend's rooms, and when I went to go get it, Luis was trying to steal it. and my friend was like, Luis, I can't give it to you. I can't give it to you. So I remember seeing him and just like, hey, hey, look, I'll split it with you. You know, I'll give you some. He's like, no, I want to drink it with you. I want to drink it with you. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And then while that's happening, like LJ, Louis John, he's kind of in the doorway. And so like I ended up meeting him. And then this was on the third floor of McLaughlin, and Ricardo and LJ live on the second floor. So at that point, LJ hits up Ricardo, was like, hey, like we have a possible recruit over here. And so we ended up just drinking in the room. And then after that, like I would see him on campus. And then it was like my birthday, like a couple of weeks later. So they, you know, had a party for my birthday. They had already met Robert, who I ended up pledging with. Like they had already met him. So I met him at my birthday party. And then, yeah. And then like what really sold me was like during Christmas break, there was like three of them that were going on this trip to TJ to go build houses for like families down in TJ. And I had done that twice as a student at Bellarmine during like spring break. And so I just thought it was cool that they were doing this thing, right? That like I'd already done. And like I already knew, I was like, I'm sure we're going to drink a little bit, but like, yeah, but the idea, right, is that you're going to go back, you're going to give back, you're going to build a house, and, you're going to spend part of your Christmas break doing this. So I remember like going on that trip and then like asking them, hey, so what's this NAC thing about? Cause like, it was always just very intriguing. Cause like we would be hanging out and then they was like, oh yeah, we got to go. We got to take care of business. It was like, well, I want to go. I want to take care of business. It's like, you can, It's like, oh, dude, like, I'm like, what? Like, okay. So I remember being at this trip and TJ just asking, like, it's like, what's this about? They kind of told me a little bit. And then after that, it was kind of like, yeah, like you should come to this dinner. And I'm like, okay. So I went to this dinner and then like, I remember Indo, like making this speech is like, yeah, thank you guys for being here. If you're interested in this process, like a little bit more, then like follow us to the house. And I was like, I guess we're gonna get more information. And then like next thing you know, like I'm like waiting outside, and all of a sudden I walk in this house and we got candles. Like I had no idea it was a pinning dinner. Like I had no idea. I had no idea that like typically it's like disclosed. It's like, hey, look, these are rush events. Here's your pinning dinner. Like it was just like, oh yeah, like come to this dinner, like make sure you dress nicely. He's like, okay. And it's like, oh yeah, if you want to learn more information, like come to the house. It's like, okay. And I'm like, all of a sudden, like there with a candle and like I'm taking an oath. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Like I had like no clue that this was like it was just like it was like I was like in awe. Am I pledging? Like what? And then yeah, and so like that night I met Matt, who pledged with us, and then I met Oscar too. So I'd met two of the other guys that ended up pledging. But yeah, it was just like I didn't know I was pledging, and then I was pledging like all of a sudden. But that's kind of what got me interested. It was just like I was hanging out with them, and like I just wanted to like hang out with them more. I really appreciated the fact that they took that trip to TJ, right? And like it let me it showed me that they were interested in doing other things other than just kind of partying. And actually, like the following year, I ended up doing the trip with my girlfriend at the time. And then like there was like another couple people that went on the trip with us because I ended up doing it like another 2 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of what got me into it, or that's kind of what sold me. But like, I guess the deeper motivation for me was that like up until that point, my entire life, like I played soccer. I'd always been like the captain of the team. And so I always kind of had a family, right? Like my soccer buddies were always like the buddies that I hung out with on the weekends. Like that was like my group. And so now it was like the first time in my life, like I'm a pretty social person. So like, I know I wouldn't have any issues kind of meeting people, but like, I didn't have like a group, like a solid core group. And so what I saw in NAC was like, oh, like here's like a really close knit group of guys that seem to know each other really, really well. And every single time I see one of them, like 2 or 3 of them pop up, like they pop up, and like at the time, right, there was only 6 actives, right? Because it was Abe and Mace who were seniors. Tito, I guess Tito was like always like the other guy that was there. And then like the 4 guys that were like the same year. But like, if I hung out with one of them within like 20, 30 minutes, there'd be like another 2. Right. And everyone's always kind of just like exchanging stories. And it's like, oh, so like for me, I saw that little tight little knit group, and it's something that I knew I didn't have at that moment. And it's something that I'd always had. And I was like, well, this is where I can find it. So.
And then from there, you got really involved, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I ended up, let's see, my sophomore year, and I was like the social chair. Junior year, I ended up being the vice president. And then senior year, I was going to be the vice president and the pledge master. But National said that you can't have 2 executive positions. So I stepped down from the presidency because I wanted to be in charge of kind of bringing in like the next group of guys. And then that's when we had the MU line, which was the largest class. They started with 13, and then they ended up with 9. So it was even bigger than the Eta, than like the Etas, because they were 8. So yeah, and then after that, like the chapter kind of blew up for a while. We had like 20 members at one point, 25, something like that. And then like now we're kind of, I don't know, things looking kind of slim. I mean, the whole pandemic, you're like, how are you going to recruit when you're like, having classes online? And then even then, like the group of guys that they had, I think I met like one of them. They're all pretty quiet. So I mean, like things are just like a little bit different.
Well, everybody's quiet when you're talking to a doctor. It's different.
Well, I guess so.
You act different around doctors.
I mean, I wasn't a doctor when they met me.
Oh, okay. Talk to me about what's your take on the state of academia, both like going online and is I mean, is college as valuable as it used to be? Is college as worth it from the price tag perspective? How many? I mean, I got to believe that you have your share of student loans, if not yours and my share.
So fortunate for me, part of the reason why I did the PhD was because I got it paid for.
So you don't have any student loans?
I have student loans for my undergrads though, because everything I was able, like as soon as I started paying the loans, that's when I went to go get my master's degree, so I could just keep deferring. So I have some student loans from like my undergrad.
But your master's and your PhD got paid for?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, and the student debt from undergrad isn't terrible, but
I mean, when we say not terrible, because Santa Clara at this point for 4 years is like $280,000 or something insane.
Yeah, it was definitely not that. It's definitely not that. But you know, people. When I was a graduate student, some of the professors in the department, in the history department, were already talking like, yeah, you know, the state of academia is really rough. You know, there's a push for more online classes. Some students tend to prefer that. You know, and then like obviously a lot of professors are opposed to it because of the fact that like, well, it kind of makes your job obsolete if you can just put up these modules and then students, right, can kind of just like do it on their own. Like that takes away from your instruction. I don't think the pandemic helped much because I you know, for people that are proponents of like more online classes, more online education, it kind of just shows you, okay, not only do we have the tools, but look, like we're gonna have like a whole like we're gonna have like at least half a generation, right, that is going to be influenced by online learning, and we'll see how that kind of ends up, right? I think the jury's still out on that because of the fact that at the university level, I think people have been socialized already for like the most part, as much as they're going to be. When you're talking about online education for like elementary school kids, middle school kids, even high school kids, they're still learning a lot of their socialization skills and kind of having them online. I think there's going to be a good group of kids that just like grow up with anxiety, grow up with like not knowing how it's like to be around, or like that are just learning how to transition to being in person again. Right. Kind of, it was actually like really, really sad that like, I'm not sure if you knew this, but the first semester that I was at Santa Clara this last year, I guess the student body was actually on top of the administration, really trying to get them to hire more part-time counselors, because they kept saying there isn't enough counseling available for students returning. And there were 3 suicides.
Holy smokes. At Santa Clara?
At Santa Clara in the first quarter.
I didn't hear any of that.
In the first quarter. Well, there were 2 suicides, and then there was 1 death that occurred. I guess some student was drunk and he fell off a bridge, but at first people were kind of thinking that it was a suicide also. But yeah, I mean, the fact that there were 2 though, and
in
then,
such a small student body.
And when the second one happened, it was like, I don't know, maybe like week 8. And I remember showing up to campus and I had class at like 10:30. I taught class at 10:30, and I remember getting an email like at like 10 o'clock, like, hey, like, just so you know, this happened, and you know, if you can cancel class, or maybe, you know, you can have class and just like, you know, provide a space for students to kind of vent. And so at first I kind of thought, okay, well, this sounds like the university is trying to respond. But when the students came in, they were like, this happened like at 9 o'clock at night. This happened in Swig, which is like the biggest dorm, especially for first year students. They had to evacuate the whole building. Students didn't have a place to sleep. They didn't have, right, like they're like, some students slept like in Benson, like on the floor. Students were on Instagram just like sending out messages like, hey, if someone needs a place to stay, like shoot me a line and maybe I can put you up for the night or, for like a couple nights. But like a lot of the relief effort actually came from students, just like recognizing that there was a tragedy on campus and that people needed help. And that like, even just like counseling was being done by students for the most part, like for the first couple of days, because the university just wasn't prepared. So like that was like really tragic. And, like when you talk, and I'm bringing that up, right? We're talking about kind of socialization and kind of what an online learning experience can do for you. If you're like an anxious person of being around other people, and if you just study better on your own, I can see how it's a viable option. But I think the majority of people actually enjoy being around other people, enjoy being in the classroom. And so if you take that away from them and then try to force them back into it too quickly, right, there's a lot of kind of mental health issues that kind of obviously that can arise from that. So, I mean, that's just one aspect of like the whole academia thing.
Sure. And so what is your play? What are you doing? Are you standing with the old guard and just holding out hope, or are you like becoming the greatest online teacher ever? Or
I mean, I've taken some classes on like online instruction. At LMU, there's going to be like a session, like it's like a 3-hour session on Thursday and like another 2-hour session on Friday that I registered for, right, to just like learn more about. So at Santa Clara, their LMS, their learning management system, was Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
LMU uses Brightspace. I've never heard of that one before. And so like I for the most part, right, they said like you need to be teaching in class. Like, okay, I will be in class, but once I learn how to use Brightspace, I'm going to provide things on, right, kind of on your shell or whatever, kind of in your modules, whether that's extra notes. I've been providing my lecture slides. All the readings are always available. Sometimes I'll ask students if they have questions, they can email them to me. And then just to address them, right, instead of kind of emailing every student like individually, I'll post a video where like, okay, so these are 3 questions that I received from students. Here are the questions, and here's kind of my response, right? And then I can just post that so everyone can hear the question and everyone can hear the response. So it's not just like individualized, right? To kind of try to reach the rest of the class as best as possible. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what you should be doing as an educator, is not just tailoring to the 1 or 2 students who take the time to write your questions, but right, because even online, you'll still find students that are too shy to talk. And so, right, you want to try and address as many questions as possible to the entire class. So, I mean, I don't know. I get, I'm a hybrid version, I guess. Like, I enjoy being in the classroom. I enjoy looking at students' faces to gauge whether or not they're actually understanding what I'm doing. Right. If they're online, they can just kind of, put on a background. They can, be there. And so I think it's a little easier to engage students from a teacher's perspective. It's easier to engage them when you're in person, because you can ask a direct question. You can kind of walk up to them. If you have an assignment, you can come by and you can kind of like, oh, okay, I see that's what you're writing, but did you think about this, right? If you're kind of online, you can't necessarily see what they're doing all the time. Not to say that I'm trying to police them, but just to kind of oversee what they're doing, to like make sure that they're understanding the concepts, and then just to guide them in the right direction if I see that maybe they're missing a point or something.
Yeah, so I'm an enormous proponent of online education. All of my curriculum, all of my lectures are online, and the difference is that online education only works for highly motivated individuals.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not highly motivated, then online is the worst thing ever. And that said, if you're not motivated, in class isn't that great either.
Yeah.
Right. For any party involved. It's not great for the student. It's definitely not great for the faculty. It's just kind of a shitty situation all the way around, where it's like, I don't want to be here. It's like, well, I don't want to teach to somebody who doesn't want to be here. Yeah. So we're kind of just, we're all wasting our time. But
yeah,
I mean, because you don't want to police, you don't want to do any of that stuff. So I feel and it just came to mind right now, it's that education is going to become something that is only for people who want it. It's
And I've actually had this discussion with a buddy of mine, because I agree with what he says kind of on the surface, but so what my buddy said was like, look, there are some students that just don't deserve to go to college, that like, they were not good students, they're not going to be good college students. And you know what, like, trade school is probably better for them. And you're right, but I think you need to be careful with pigeonholing students, or right, tracking them and kind of saying, okay, this is a student that's not going to go to college, because historically minoritized communities like brown people, black people, we've already done that, where we were tracking, like, okay, that's a Mexican student, they're not going to go to college, they're going to be a mechanic. And so we worked so hard to dismantle that so that we would have an opportunity. And then just to say that, like, yeah, we're actually going to go back to something similar, I think that's missing the point. That's at a huge disservice to not just minority communities, but even like just students who maybe don't have the motivation in high school for whatever reason, because they don't see themselves in the curriculum, because they're studying something that they're not interested in. But once they get to college, they actually are, right, because they can focus their education on what they're actually interested in a little bit more. So, I mean, I do think that, I do think that having an undergraduate degree is important. I do think that it's not as valuable today as it used to be. I think that like now, like, you need to have more, or not just more, but like, you need to have work experience. I think that will set you apart from any other candidate once you graduate. And a lot of it also has to do with kind of what kind of field you're going into. Right, as if you're going to be a teacher, right, you're not going to be in the classroom until you get that piece of paper. And that's just the way it's going to be. If you're going to be an accountant, I don't think you necessarily need to go to a 4-year institution, because you can go to a community college for a lot cheaper, right? Get your certificate, and then even after that, right, you can take the class to get your CPA afterwards. So I think part of it depends on, like, kind of what you're saying, what kind of individual you are. To some extent, I do think that college, to some extent, I think that college is more about the experience at this point, not necessarily about the education that you're getting. It's about, right, okay, you're going out there, you're gonna have a good time, but right, you have these responsibilities.
You don't have any responsibility.
Like, well, you have these responsibilities that you're supposed to go to class, and you're supposed to,
That's like very minimal.
Yeah, but it's very minimal. Yeah, it's very minimal. It's very minimal. So if we're looking to train people to like be in the workforce, college may not necessarily be. It's not what it used to be, I don't think. I mean, even while I was there, like, I would think about it sometimes, and I've actually had this question, that when did it, and as I'm thinking about it, I'm starting to come up with an answer that I don't necessarily like. That when did college transition from a place of prestige to this kind of party, kind of, okay, you're going to go, you're going to have fun. When did that start to happen? And I think the easy answer is, well, when it became accessible to the masses.
Yeah, well, I think there's two pieces. I think absolutely whenever the student loans came about and made it accessible that anybody could go as long as you could pay to play. Yeah. But the other piece, I think, is the advent of the internet. Once all information was democratized, then all of a sudden, oh, I don't need to go to college in order to learn this. I can figure this out on YouTube in 2 seconds, or I can just pull out my phone, and I like all of the information that you learn in elementary school, where you memorize the presidents, or where you did this, or where you did that.
There's YouTube videos for that.
It's absolutely useless at this point, because I can ask Siri or ask Alexa in 2 seconds and know that information. And so having that at your disposal because you memorized and then took a test, it's not nearly as valuable. Yeah. I'm not saying there's no value in it. I mean, there again, if all of that constitutes online education, it's only valuable to the highly motivated individual, because the slacker is not going to ask Siri or ask Alexa even. And
Right.
so as far as the experience is concerned, I loved college as much as anybody, if not more, and had the most wonderful time. But when I think about it, if my kid comes to me and says, "Hey, can I borrow $300,000 to go
Yeah.
drink for 4 years?" I'm
Yeah.
gonna be like, "How about I give you $6,000 and you go to Europe for a
Yeah.
summer and then come back and get a job?" Like,
Yeah.
it the experience is wonderful, but at this point I see it as a luxury, an absolute
Yeah.
luxury, unless you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a historian, or the likes. Oftentimes it's completely unnecessary, and
Yeah.
while the experience is phenomenal, that's a really expensive way to find yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
go live in the mountains of Guatemala for a while and you can find yourself, and it'd
I
be a one hundredth of the amount.
there was I bumped into, this is like back in like October. I bumped into one of the students that I used to teach in or in middle school. So he was a seventh grader, and I was teaching. Um, and I bumped into him on campus at Santa Clara, and I was like, "Oh, dang!" Like he was kind of a big kid then, but like he really grew up. Like he's hella tall, and so but I recognized his face, and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And we started chopping it up, and he said that he had a terrible high school experience, and he didn't think he wanted to go to college, and so for like 4 years, like it was either 4 or 5 years. He said that he would work for like 3 months at a time, like live at home. His parents like weren't charging him money, and so he would just work, save up money, and then he would go live in like Spain for like 2-3 months. And then while he was in Spain, he would work there, save up some money, and then he's like, dude, I lived in Spain, I lived in Germany, I lived in Peru, I lived in Guatemala. He's like, yeah, I did this for like 4 years, just kind of going around different places, like 6 months at a time, 3 months at a time, taking different trips. And he's like, yeah, like now, I came back and I went to a community college because like now I know what I want to do. He's like, I went to community college for 2 years. I just transferred, so it was my first year here at Santa Clara. But like I'm already looking for internships, and I'm trying to do. He's like a highly motivated student, but he found himself right doing all this traveling, which
For a lot cheaper than $280,000.
yeah, yeah, and then and right now, right, he's at Santa Clara, and he's like, yeah, I'm taking out some loans, but it's not nearly as much as it would have been had to come here for the 4 years.
Right.
And the thing is that like I'm working as I'm doing this because of the fact that like I've been working, and like I need money. So and he's like, he's like, I'm not your traditional student. I'm in my late 20s, and it's like my second year of college technically. And so he's like, yeah, I'm not your traditional student, but because of that, I think I'm going to be in and out like a lot quicker because I'm focused. I know what I'm studying. I know what I'm trying to do.
Right.
And he already got, to find himself in a lot cooler way than like, right, 4 years drinking the same campus.
standing around a keg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't think it'll ever be the same. I mean, I was a freshman in 98, right? I mean, that's when I guess the internet came out in 93, but it really started hitting in the late 90s. I mean, I saw the .com boom and bust right there in Silicon Valley. And ever since then, like, it's the whole world is completely different. And I think that there's still a lot of people playing by the old rules that are just going to be left behind.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, then I think one of the most beautiful things of using that doctorate is you have so much information that while it's awesome to bless the students of Loyola, there's this entire world that could use and benefit from all the stuff you just spent 8 years learning, or should we say, what is it, 14, 16, 18 years learning.
Yeah.
Right. And so why isn't it all online and not even free, but
yeah.
Like,
yeah. Why isn't it more accessible? Yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, like I enjoy being in person, but I do see the value in, right, like if a student can't make it to class, or right, like if there's like legitimate reasons that the professor can't be there, like, well, I still want to make sure I'm on schedule so I can provide my lectures, or like maybe I shorten the lecture and I make them watch like these other videos that are also useful.
Well, and here's the other piece of it. There's there's 1,000 people in the world, somewhere in the world, right? There's 1,000 people. There's 7.7 billion people, but there's 1,000 people who would each pay $250 to take your class online, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's $250,000 a year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For one class.
Yeah.
And you're going to teach 4 classes and they're going to pay you 65.
Yep. I mean, so it's funny that you bring that one up though, because
I can help you.
I mean, please,
that's my specialty.
If you can find some way to, like, put a class of mine or a couple classes of mine online where people are going to pay me directly, or where I can where I can monetize the information that I have in here.
Yes.
Like let me know. Like, no, I would do that in a heartbeat.
That's what I'm doing. I'm letting you know.
Okay. I'm going to hit you up like next.
Yeah, no, it's too easy. It's too easy where you can sit there and you can record your lecture, you can put your slides, you can, I mean, if you wanted to, I was trying to get Fabio to start a consulting business, a restaurant consultancy, where he could sell a, restaurant university, and he could sell online courses, because there's 1 billion restaurants out there, and there's 1,000 of them that would pay $250 to know all that he knows about running a restaurant.
Yeah,
that's $250,000. Now, I'm not saying it's I'm not saying it's super easy, but the hard work is the 18 years you just put in.
Yeah.
The hard work is the 25 years he's been in the restaurant industry. That's the hard work. Learning how to edit video, or learning how to turn on a camera and getting some good audio, like, that's the easy part compared to all the books you've read.
Yeah. I mean, because that's definitely something I've thought about, like what if I start like a YouTube channel, right? And like, okay, like Chicano history with Profe Jara, something is like, oh, here's like a 5-minute clip on like Pachucos. Here's like a 5-minute clip on like women, like Latina women in World War II.
And right? that's what you're talking about. That's absolutely necessary, but that's the marketing piece, right? Because people are going to watch that 20-second TikTok or that 5-minute YouTube video, and then they're going to get interested, and they're going to see you again, and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about this, because there's so many students who grew up and they never had a chance to learn anything about Chicano history, right? And now they're young professionals.
They can learn a lot younger.
Right, but now they're young professionals, or maybe they're old professionals working at Accenture or whatnot, and they've never been exposed to that in a professional manner. And then you're going to tell them, hey, for $250, that's nothing. That's chump change, right?
Yeah.
We find 1,000 of those folks, $250,000.
Yeah.
That's actually the sector that I'm moving towards, is myself putting together the online courses, success coaching, business coaching, marketing, and additionally, I want to help people democratize the knowledge that they have, but also monetize that, because damn, teachers are the most underpaid, underrepresented, and that's even if you are paid well, right? I'm an engineering faculty, so I'm one of those guys that you say, oh yeah, they get more of the funding. It's absolutely true. You're 100% correct on all that. And at the same time, how much am I really worth? Come on now. So yes, it's 1,000% possible. And for anybody who might be listening, I don't actually know how many bros ever hear this, but for anybody who might be listening, if you've got something to teach, I've got all the sales skills necessary to help you push that. So hit me up.
I will definitely hit you up on the side about this, because that's definitely something that I've thought about. And just, okay, like, how would I do it? How can I? Because the thing is, like, yeah, I could provide, like, and again, I just haven't taken the time to, like, okay, like, if I start like a YouTube channel, and like, I hadn't even thought about it that way, but you're right. Like, yeah, do like a 1-minute clip, like, hey, look, here's like a quick little history. And then, have a little, if you want more information on like this particular topic, you can subscribe to like this or whatever. And then here are like classes that I provide, or classes that are offered, videos that I have, like, with more information on this.
Yep.
So yeah, that like the short clips would be like a marketing kind of, like that's like the marketing tool.
this is the direction I see, both short term and long term, the educational industry going. Like my kids are homeschooled right now, and I see more and more people homeschooling.
Yeah,
And it's, hey, what do you want to learn? It's like, yeah, whatever we want. It's like, oh, we need to memorize our times tables. It's like,
yeah,
technically we don't, but we can, no, is it good? Yeah, but do we need calculus? It's like, are you going to be an engineer? No. I
yeah,
took 11 math classes after calculus,
yeah,
and I use algebra and maybe a little geometry in my life. Like that's it. That's all I've ever used.
yeah,
So why was all of that necessary, right? And
yeah,
yet people get out of high school and they don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know how to make a
yeah,
budget. They don't understand expenses and revenue, income versus liabilities, assets. Like they don't understand any of that.
yeah.
And so I think that in so many ways, the education system
It's kind of
has
backwards.
has definitely failed folks. And one of the biggest failures has been not that importance put on history, right? And so when you put stuff online, again, this is for the motivated folks. This is for the
Yeah,
highly motivated individuals. Like it's there.
yeah. No,
It's there.
I definitely see where you're coming from, and I agree with like a lot of what you're saying. I definitely agree that I should try to monetize the knowledge I got over here. So yeah, no, like thanks for bringing that up. I didn't know that that's actually something that you were like actively doing or promoting for yourself to try and do. So I'll definitely be hitting you up about that.
Absolutely, brother. Hey, I've kept you super long. Let's hit a couple of fun questions and we'll get you out of here, brother. First one is 5 favorite artists. Could be authors, musicians, actors,
So
painters.
so 5 favorite artists. Got to go with my boy Tupac.
Yep.
I definitely have his like when I was like 13, an uncle of mine gave me his All Eyes on Me album like on vinyl, and so
Wow.
yeah, so I have that. And when I was teaching at Santa Clara, I took that to my office, and so I had that straight in my office, and students were like, "Oh, that's Tupac." I was like, "Yeah, you know who that is? Okay, cool." I was like, "All right, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay." So I go Tupac. I'm gonna go David Siqueiros. He was like one of the major 3 Mexican muralists from the Mexican Revolution, and he actually did a lot of murals here in the United States, and then taught a lot of people here in the United States. So a lot of Chicano artists from the Bay Area even were actually educated by him, and so a lot of murals in the area are like influenced by him. So I go with him. So Tupac, David Siqueiros, Cantinflas. I think it'd be really cool to meet Cantinflas. Like I just grew up loving that guy. His movies are really funny. I actually wrote a couple papers about him when I was doing like Latin American history. So like, what he meant to Mexico, he meant to Latin America as a whole. So those are all like dead people. Let me see. Adele.
Nice.
I love her voice. I think she's got an interesting story. I think she'd be like a cool person just to kind of like chill. Or maybe not. I don't know. But Adele's cool. There's this group that I started listening to like a couple years ago called Duran Jones and the Indications.
I've never heard of that.
So I love oldies. So if you love, right, like your War, your Bretton Wood, this group, it's like a modern take on oldies. So like, right, their rhythms, their beats are very kind of old school. They use kind of older instruments, and their sound is very crisp and it's new. But like the lyrics are very simple. It's like retro oldies. So yeah, I if you haven't heard Duran Jones and the Indications and you like oldies, I highly recommend them.
Dig it. Next question. 5 dinner guests, dead or alive.
5 dinner guests that are alive. Damn, I blended that last question with this one.
That's okay. We could skip it. You did blend them though.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, like, yeah.
How about what was one of the funnest times you had as a knack as an undergrad, but without incriminating anybody?
Yeah. One of the funnest times I had as a knack. One of the funnest times I think would just be it was like the first Knack Fest. Was it the first one? It was like the first or the second one. I think it was the first one. It was at UCLA. It was at UCLA, and I just really like. It was at UCLA. I had a buddy who was doing his undergrad at Cal Poly, and so we went the day before. So Knack Fest started on Saturday. We drove to Cal Poly Saturday with like Ricardo, LJ, and like a few other people. Partied at Cal Poly, picked up my buddy, picked up like a few other people, drove down to UCLA. We were playing soccer, like one of the first sports was soccer. So I remember being kind of, half tipsy playing. We made it to like the semis, I think, and we ended up losing on Monterey, maybe. But like just the whole sports thing, like I remember that like there was like a hot dog eating contest or something. I remember Robert participated in that for us. Like that first Knack Fest was just like really cool because it was like a 3-day road trip, just like going down there, hanging out, and then we were gonna spend the night, but we ended up just like, fuck it, let's just drive home. So we ended up like coming home like super late. We stopped at Denny's like at 3:00 in the morning, just like eating, just like, okay, let's rest a little bit. Right, let's just like eat, and then finishing our drive on the way back or whatever. Yeah, I'd say that trip to UCLA was pretty cool.
Some of the best advice you've ever been given?
Best advice I've ever given. Don't be a statistic.
Don't be a statistic.
And I'm saying that from, there was a professor at UNM who, it was like, I was finishing my master's degree and I wasn't sure if I was going to do the PhD yet. And he told me, look, here's some statistics for you. And he was like, look, like there's only 2% of the US population has a PhD. There's like, so he gave me like all these good statistics, but then he's like, half of these people, like there would be more than half, or what was it? He put it, because he said it kind of in his backward kind of way where he gave me all these stats and I was like, damn, so like I'm going to be part of this like really, really like niche group of people. He's like, yeah, but don't look at it that way. What you need to look at it is like, yeah, that number is really small and that number could be a lot bigger, but more than half the people actually drop out at the point in time when you write your dissertation. Something like, and if the number of 50%, kind of like drop out at like the dissertation phase seems high to you, it's something like 65 or 70% of those people are Latino. Like that, and so he broke that. I was like, and so he's like, don't become a statistic. And so I actually used that a lot to motivate myself. Like when I started getting close to the dissertation, when I got to the dissertation point, like I would tell myself that professor told me it's going to get tough. Don't become a statistic. Don't become a statistic. And for me, like that actually helped motivate me a lot. That like what I'm doing, what I did was like really rare. It is difficult. There are not a lot of people that do it, and there are not a lot of people that look like me that do it. And so I need to make sure that I finish so that I can show other people from my background that it is possible, that you can do it. And that, just it's going to take a lot of hard work, but you can finish and don't be a statistic. So
love it. Last question. Who should I have on the podcast? But the catch is that you got to help me get them on.
Yeah. The person I haven't talked to in a while, and it'd be interesting to kind of hear what they were up to, because I bump into them like every now and then, just like kind of casually. Gustavo, I forget it. It's
Caravel.
Yeah. Gustavo, I think would be cool. I'm pretty sure I have his number, so I could hit him up. Gustavo, and then there was someone else that I was talking about earlier, and I hadn't even thought about them, and they popped up in my mind. Because I'll just keep it to the Untitled Chapter bros. Irk. Have you talked to Irk? I mean,
on and off over the past 20 years. We were in Florida together. We hooked up in Atlanta one time.
Okay.
Here and there, but I'm talking about over since 02. In the past 20
Yeah.
years, I've seen him probably like 3 times, 4 times.
Yeah. I mean, again, he's some guy that like will randomly pop up somewhere and like I'll just see him and like, oh damn, what's up? And like he's always just a really funny guy. He's just like always really interesting. Like he like that guy always cracks me up. So like yeah, like either Gustavo or Eric. I think I think either one of those guys would be like really cool.
I'll work on both of them. All right, brother.
All right.
Hey, I appreciate your time, man. Congratulations. Start making everybody call you doctor for what you've accomplished, bro. Make everybody call you doctor. I think it's worth it. And then we'll definitely hook up on putting together a class.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, and thank you for for doing this. Like I think this is really cool. I really enjoyed all the other episodes that you've done so far. So just keep it going, man.
Hell yeah, bro. All right, peace, man.
And in the next 2 years, one of these conferences is supposed to pop up in Salt Lake City again. So I'll hit you up.
There you go. Awesome.
Salt Lake
City. That sounds like a plan. All right, peace, Holmes.
All right, later.
Until next time, bros. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.